I am the woman who cheated on my husband. This is my confession. I was unfaithful to my husband 15 years ago. The affair was ended and he forgave me. Since then, he has had constant feelings of being second place in my heart. Several times a year he will experience a major trigger that lasts several days. This last weekend was a very significant event because I came completely clean about my actions during the affair. It took me so long because I was afraid that if he knew all the details, he would have a harder time healing. I was wrong and should have divulged everything immediately. We had a very emotional talk and expressed our tearful intentions of repairing our relationship. He is apprehensive because over the past 15 years we have had many discussions and he has always felt that I have not done all I could do to make it up to him and make him feel like he is number one. Things always improve right after our discussions and then go back to the way they were, thus causing another trigger. This morning he experienced another trigger and left for work very angry. I am so scared that I have permanently ruined my marriage. I love my husband so much and do not want him to experience any more pain. Please give some advice as what I can do right now to help him feel the love that I have for him and the desire I have to make him feel like he is the only man for me and the only one I want. Comments. You had an affair, you rug swept it. You thought wrong about holding back the truth. You basically robbed him of another 15 years with you being less than honest. 15 years later, you dropped a bomb on your husband. And now any trust he's built up over the last 15 years is gone. You just want him to say awesome, because it's 15 years later. It doesn't hurt now. Not only does he have to deal with whatever you told him, he has to deal with the fact that you've been holding it for 15 years. And 15 years ago he might have told you to take a hike had he known the truth. That was a selfish move, so the unselfish move now is to not worry about what you want and what you need. Worry about letting him figure out what he wants and he needs. Now that you've once again turned his world upside down, he'll probably never feel like the only man for you if he can never trust you. And if you continue to trickle truth him, spreading it over decades, he's going to have difficulty believing anything you say. Take the person above's advice. Get him to IC or MC soon, please. God, been almost 2 years for me. I hope I am not suffering after 15, but I know there will still be some of that pain. Every time new information comes out one day after D-Day or 15 years later, it is a new wound. Much of the work you have done to help him heal these last years was torn down again by this new stuff. Hopefully it can rebuild quickly, but yeah, IC or MC may be good. I was in IC a few years before D-Day, just haven't gone back, need to. MC not covered by insurance and too expensive, so we try on our own. Maybe try to get away for a weekend. I always feel better when it's just the two of us, helps regain focus, and there is no better way to make me feel important than to keep me naked in bed for a few days and prove it. Write him a timeline and diary of the affair. Write an agreement for him, that if you cheat again, he will not pay alimony. Discuss the property settlement and any child custody issues. Hopefully you used protection. If not, get tested for STD. Have any children tested to show him that he is the father. When you cheated 15 years ago and deceived him for 15 years, you used energy to cheat, your brain to lie and deceive. Did you tell him about the other man? Have you gone to NC with the other man? Have you told the other man to never ever contact you? Make sure you do not defend the other man, especially after all this time. Did you do anything with the other man that you would not do with your H? He will trigger if you try to fix that now. So, do something for him that you did not do with the other man, and use your brain. Show him that he was never number two to the other man. How can you do that? You know him better than I do. What is he like? What have you told him about the other man and why you cheated? Do something to show him that he always was your number one and that the POSOM was never number one. How can you do that? Do not cheat on your H. Too late. But with your brain, you can think of something. If he cheated on you, what would you want him to do for you to show you that you were always number one in his life? Let us know what you do to show him he is your number one. And no secrets anymore in your marriage. OP responds, I have had no contact with the OM since the cheating event. I told my husband 2 days later about it but did leave some details out. During this latest trigger over the weekend, I did some research on helping a spouse heal from infidelity. And the advice was to be totally transparent. I truly thought I was sparing his feelings by not giving all details. I understand that by coming clean so late I have destroyed whatever faith he had in me. It is like I did it all over again. By looking at it that way, it's like I'm asking for a third chance. I'm not sure he's willing to do that. My husband's triggers can come from seeing something on TV but almost always come from the feeling that I am not doing everything in my power sexually, emotionally, and physically to make it up to him. During these 15 years we have moved out of state, bought a house and had 6 children. He loves me and I love him, but I fear that I have not done enough. I want him to be happy and for he and I and our family to stay together. There was nothing I did with the OM sexually that I have not done with my spouse. My husband feels that I planned and made time for the OM and he does not get that same treatment. That is a major issue. He feels that over the course of 15 years since the event, I have continually failed to make him feel special and without a doubt my man. I thought that by being a supportive wife, mother, housekeeper, etc. that would be what he wanted. I have continually failed to be the aggressor that he so desperately needs. He has come to me with unconventional sexual requests that I have not always embraced. We have done those things, but he feels that he always has to ask for them. I have not been the initiating party almost all of the time. It's not a disinterest in sex with him. I had a hard time not associating these new sexual experiences with the deviant behavior I exhibited by having an affair in the first place. Update. I was out of town with my H for the day but have returned and read all of the posts up until this morning. I told my husband about this thread and have shared it with him. I'm not sure if he is interested in posting himself, but he has read all posts and we have discussed some of them. We were married when I was 18 and he was 19. We were high school sweethearts, went to prom together. He even proposed at one of my school dances. I attended the university and he went to work full-time. About 2 years into our marriage, I began working as a receptionist for a construction company and cut back on my school attendance. It was there that I met the OM. One of my duties was to get instructions or messages to the foreman on the jobs by pager and phone. I had verbal contact with him because of these duties. When the workers came back to the office at the end of the day, I would see him. He was much older than me. One day during an information message on the phone, our conversation took a different tone. He commented that he thought women would make good form setters. This comment wasn't that significant in what his opinion was. It was a turning point from just talking business to having more personal verbal contact. In early deck there was a party where I introduced my H to my coworkers, including the OM. My H does not remember what he looked like, but he does remember being introduced. Through deck I continued to perform my work duties, and whenever I had to contact the OM there would usually be some friendly, flirty conversation. At home I began to feel like I wasn't getting enough attention from my H. He liked to hunt and would spend some free time preparing for that. In my mind I selfishly thought he was spending too much time on that and not enough on me. I began to resent his interest in hunting. I did not communicate this with him at all. Instead, I withdrew from him and we would argue and have tension between us. In Jan I received a note under my desk calendar from the OM. I know now that it was a feeler note to see if he might have a chance with me. The note said he hoped I was having a good day. Why did I write back? I expressed the same sentiment back. I later received another note telling me how pretty I was and that he had noticed me. I wrote back the same thing. The next note was an invitation to meet him after work at the post office. I went and we kissed in his car. When I got home there was a note from my husband to meet him at a hotel. I went and we spent the night there together. While he was planning and carrying out a romantic night together, I was kissing someone else. A few days later there was another note again inviting me to the post office. I went and we kissed in his car. On the way home the truck I was driving lost power and I parked it on the side of the freeway. The OM had been driving behind me and he stopped to pick me up and take me home. My H saw his vehicle when he dropped me off. That sat my husband went hunting. The OM called me for the first time outside of work and we met at a freeway rest parking area. I got in his car and we drove out in the wild. He had sex in his car. When it was over, I was shaking and upset and he took me back to my car. He said he would call me later. I said goodbye and tried to calm down. I cried and panicked on my drive home. I took a shower, threw away my underwear and took the dog for a walk. My H was there when I got home. We went to a movie that night and I rejected him when he tried to initiate sex. My H knew something was up. He had suspected of a while. He confronted me on Monday and asked if there was someone else. I wanted to tell him before but was too cowardly. I told him then that there was someone else. He punched our bedroom mirror and had to be taken to the hospital by ambulance for treatment. A few days later the OM called and my husband talked to him. There was never any contact with him again. My husband and I rug swept this affair and a few months later became pregnant with our first child. We had 5 more since then. It has been in the last few years that my husband has been interested in knowing the details. I said I didn't remember them, which was untrue. I remember most of what happened. I am not always great on remembering details, especially under pressure. But this could have been avoided by being transparent in the beginning. I lied to him to try to protect him, not realizing that what he was imagining was potentially worse than what had really happened. The details I left out were that I did not use a condom when I said that I had. Also, the details about the notes, kissing sessions, and flirting at work. I know that my affair was my choice. It was not my husband's fault and he was not neglectful of me. Even if he had been, he did not deserve at all what happened. I was incredibly selfish and thought only of myself. I didn't mean to hurt him, but I didn't consider his feelings either. I have continued to be selfish over the last 15 years by withholding information. My H has had enough. When I first posted I was terrified that our marriage was over. When he got home that night, he tore up everything, wedding photos, gifts, took all jewelry, and tore up the wedding dress. Although his hands did the physical damage, my actions had destroyed those items long ago. I cleaned up the mess and felt relief that these items that had been such a painful reminder to my H were now gone. We don't want to get a divorce, but things cannot continue the way they have been. We have decided to treat this marriage as a new relationship. I have to woo my husband. I have to win him back. I am committed to him and to being the wife he deserves. For too long I have neglected him and let him wallow in self-doubt and depression. No more. He is my one and only, and I love him so much. My husband has read all the posts on this thread. I think it has helped somewhat, but it has also brought to light some issues. There have been many questions that I have glossed over and not answered. Some of these were whether or not I thought the OM was more attractive, or was I more attracted to him? And did I consider leaving my husband? The OM was not more attractive. I was not more physically attracted to him. And I did not consider leaving my husband. I still don't have a definitive answer as to why I did what I did, but I know that I liked the attention and felt like I could do whatever I wanted. It was a purely selfish act and was not a result of what my husband did or did not do. He is not at fault at all for what I did. Any issue or grievance I may have had prior should have been addressed and communicated. It wasn't communicated. I had mentioned his love of hunting. It is not a reason for my choice. It's easy to blame the BS when trying to explain reasons for action, but the truth is, I am solely responsible for the choices I made. Also, I neglected to mention that the reason I joined this forum was because it was his suggestion. I have not made communication a priority in our marriage, and especially in regard to this issue, and have not taken the initiative to seek out resources that could be helpful to understand what happened or how I could help him heal. The things I have done have not come from my own mind. That is so painful for him, because it is as if the affair has continued with me not actively seeking for ways to make him feel special. He feels unspecial not in spite of some things I have done, like try to be a good wife, but rather by what I have not done, like be his lover. I had posted earlier that I didn't do anything with the OM that I didn't do with my husband. That is true on a physical level, but untrue in relation to how I make my husband feel. By going with the OM, I made him feel wanted. This made my husband feel unwanted, and by not pursuing him and coming up with my own ways to try to win him back and fight for him, I have continued to make him feel unwanted. It is as if the OM got my best and my H has had to settle with what's left. It kills me that he feels this way and that I have not seen that, or rather have not realized the gravity of his feelings and the damage that my inactivity has caused. When I told my H about the affair, it was because he asked. I wanted to tell him before, but again, did not act on my own to make the truth known. I relied on him to do the heavy lifting and have continued to do that throughout our marriage. Instead of taking charge of the healing that so desperately needed and needs to happen, I have let him take the reins. This makes him feel that I don't care about him. Now that I feel I have a better understanding of his feelings and how my inactivity has affected him, I can no longer allow it to continue. I have been wrong and selfish. I want to be with my husband, not because we should be together because of responsibilities or obligations, but because I want to be with him. I want to give him better than what I gave someone else. If the tables were turned, I would not have divorced my husband. I would have been deeply hurt and very insecure about his feelings for me. I would have wanted him to make time for me and make me feel special. I would want communication during the day to know he was thinking of me. I would want him to make me forget through his overwhelming gestures of love and kindness. I need to show him genuine acts of love and selflessness. I have hunted with him and would like to go again. I want to impress him with loving gestures before he asks for them. I understand that I have violated the intimacy in our marriage. It was never my intention to protect any privacy with OM or to protect him. Even though that wasn't the intention, the appearance of that being the intention is damaging to my husband. The most important thing to me is my husband and his happiness. I have never experienced anything with anyone that comes close to rivaling the specialness and closeness of the experiences I have had with my husband. My husband has forgiven me and I have forgiven myself for my terrible actions. There is no reason to not fully embrace sex with my husband and enjoy every second of it. He deserves a wife who is interested in every way in him and shows it through intimate sexual and non-sexual acts. I want to be that wife. Comments. I'm glad to see your response. To be clear, my post was not about your entire set of issues giving rise to your A, but only about why your husband is feeling second best. We agree that it may have seemed that you were protecting something with the OM and you have denied that was your intention. Good for you. Perception is reality for a while as far as BSs are concerned, and then reality is reality. Keep being open and honest, and hopefully your H will make that transition soon. I think a serious question is whether you actually gave your AP your best. Perhaps you did, and that may be an issue for you to address in MC. On the other hand, you may not have given AP your best at all. Either way, it might help your husband to know that whatever it was that you had with the AP, it never compared to what you have with him. That still leaves open the question, why did you do it? But that question is always asked, never has an easy answer. And truthfully, there is never really a right answer to that question. It is not as if any BS would ever say, well then, I agree with your choice to cheat. there is an honest answer, and that is what is needed. I believe you are giving honest answers to your H. Work on making sure your answers are thorough, complete, and accurate to help keep him from drawing incorrect conclusions. In either event, if you are committed to being the type of wife that you just described, then that is something worth both of you fighting for. And contrary to my usual feelings of antipathy towards a WS, I really wish you success in rebuilding your relationship. Story 2. I have been married for 15 years, and from my knowledge, my husband has always been faithful to me until now. For the last 6 months or so, I have been super stressed out from all kinds of issues, mainly personal with kids and losing my mother. My husband and I have been sleeping apart during this time as well, but we still have maintained an okay sex life. He just chose to sleep on the couch and says it was because he didn't want to disturb me watching TV late at night. Although this bothered me, I just went along with it. He seemed to be upset most of the time, so we didn't really communicate much without arguing. So things weren't really good for these months. But I didn't know how bad they really were. So, a few weeks ago, I awake at 2 a.m. hearing my husband in the living room on the phone with someone. It wasn't so much of a big deal since he had just got home from work, but what was strange was the fact that I had been seeing him on the phone more and more lately, when he rarely ever talked to anyone other than his family on the phone our entire marriage. So, during this phone conversation at 2 a.m., I hear him end it by saying, "I will text you when I get up," which really disturbed me. I was positive he couldn't have been up talking to a male that late, and then telling him he'd text him when he got up. So I knew it had to be a woman. I was really hurt but didn't want to jump to conclusions. So, then a few days later, I leave, and soon as I get back, I hear him outside in the backyard on the phone again. This time ending the conversation by saying he needed to smoke a cigarette to get his mind right. Since the conversations didn't really sound like cheating, I had an uncomfortable feeling it still was, so I debated how to approach him with it, especially since he seemed so upset with me lately and unapproachable. I then spent the next few days really upset because I just felt like he was cheating on me, and this is why he didn't sleep in our room anymore. And I have been a fool thinking we could work past this. Eventually, I got really upset and just asked him who he was talking to over the phone via a text message. And since he didn't reply, I had to just ask him face to face, which I dreaded. He got super pissed and said he was talking to this person about a job, but I'm like at 2 a.m. So, he goes on to say, well, that's because he gets off late. So, I didn't like how he blew up at me for asking, and acted like he didn't care. So I told him I would just file for a divorce and leave him alone, since I can't ask my husband of 15 years who he is on the phone with. Also, he threw in my face that me knowing who he was talking to was just my way of controlling everything. So, since it seemed like our marriage was over, and I felt helpless and like I couldn't even talk to him about something that's bothering me and making me uncomfortable, the next day I went and got the papers for a divorce. I completed and filed the papers the following day. On this day, I debated if I would serve the papers to him because I really started having second thoughts. Later that day, I used the only car we have to pick my younger kids up from school immediately after him returning from picking up our older children from school. He accidentally left his cell phone on the seat, so I hurried up and left because I really wanted to look through his phone to see who he was calling, which I have never ever done before. To my surprise, I found he was texting some woman, getting pics from her, and calling this same woman, who was saved in his phone as S. I was so hurt. I read texts from her saying she loved him and him asking her to send him sexy pics, etc. I also saw a text that appeared to have made reference to them being together a few days prior when he all of a sudden went to spend the night with his mom. Since she lives a few hours away, I didn't think much of that all of a sudden visit until I later found a receipt from a restaurant, dine-in for two, paid for with his credit card, which I never mentioned, but also helped my suspicion out. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but since I was parked only around the corner from our house to pick up our kids, I knew he would walk around there as quick as he could when he realized he left his phone. So I had to read quick. I wanted to get her phone number, but only had just enough time to read all the messages, which at least went back to before this past Christmas, which he also spent with his mother and not our family, surprisingly. As soon as I could finish reading the texts, I saw him walking to the car, which I knew why, because he didn't want me to see his messages. So I quickly pretended to read a book while waiting on the kids, and he knocked on the window and asked did he leave his phone. I gave it to him and he walked back home. I was so pissed but had to keep it together in front of the kids. As soon as I got home, I got the papers and served him myself and left for a few hours to calm my nerves. He then texted me saying how he thought I wouldn't go through his stuff and how he didn't think I would file papers so fast. I was even more pissed because I didn't mention anything about his phone and what I saw. Only served him divorce papers which he knew I said I'd file from 2 nights prior when asking who he was speaking to on the phone. So, I texted him back and told him how hurt I was for him cheating and asked him if he wasn't. Why was he mentioning me going through his stuff? He replied saying he never cheated and he wouldn't sign the papers if they say cheating. So I replied and told him papers just say irreconcilable differences, not cheating. Although I know he had. He replied back saying he never cheated, so I replied back saying he lied. He did cheat, and that I am not going to play back and forth games. I went through the phone and say the messages, pics, etc. So, he then replied back and said he only started back talking to her because he couldn't talk to me, and after all these years, he couldn't make me happy, so he felt our marriage was over. I couldn't believe what I was reading, especially since I felt like I couldn't talk to him all this time, and that he was distancing himself from me. We responded back and forth, and I told him how hurt I was. Later the next day, he came home and we actually talked and agreed we would forgive each other and work on our marriage so we can stay together. I was so emotional, hurt, and not thinking straight, so I only really asked him would he promise to never talk to her again, which he said yes to and apologized to me. It's only been about 6 days since all this occurred, and things have been super good between us. He sleeps in our bed again, and we have really reconnected like old times. It feels really nice because I really love my husband and didn't want a divorce. Even after finding out he cheated. I used to always say I would leave a man if he cheated, but in reality, I just couldn't leave my husband, especially after he wanted to work our marriage out as much as I did. However, although these last few days have been great, I am now starting to feel like he may be still talking to this woman. And also, I feel like I let him off way too easy due to me being so emotional, hurt, and desperate to save my marriage. What I mean is, I have a list of questions I really want answered because I feel like although I forgave him, I don't even know the extent of their relationship, how long it occurred, what actually happened between them, and who she even is. Because it sounds like she is an ex. I feel like it is unfair for me to have all these questions that I am afraid to ask him about in fear of him getting upset and our marriage ending, but at the same time, it's unfair to have to live with something and pretend like it's okay, and then have the issue resurface and cause problems later on in our marriage. Either way, I want to talk to him about her and get my questions answered, honestly, hopefully, and without him blowing up at me. I kind of feel like now is the best time before too much time passes, so he doesn't feel like why I'm bringing up something that happened so long ago that I forgave him for. I am so afraid to talk to him about this. Please help me with advice. Do I pretend nothing is bothering me and secretly be torn up inside not knowing if he had sex with this woman, how long they were even together, and just the extent of their relationship, and if he is still involved with her or not, or say something with the risk of a final blowout and lose my 15-year marriage with a man I love but lost trust for? I believe our marriage can survive from his infidelity, but I just have to know the truth about the other woman, and I don't feel like I can genuinely move on in our marriage without knowing, even though things seem to be going well right now. I am so lost and don't know what to do. Please help with any advice, comments. In your fear about losing your marriage, you are willing to sweep the affair under the rug. This is bad and will only allow him to continue his affair while married to you. You will be in pain and he will have his cake and eat it, too. As Romain says, there have to be consequences to his betrayal. The ultimate consequence is divorce, which you have threatened and then walked back. You have to mean it in order for him to believe the threat and act on it. Right now, you don't know much of anything about the affair. You haven't demanded transparency from him. You have no way of checking to see if the affair is over. Really, you have done very little to kill the affair. He needs to become an open book to you to prove that the affair is done. He needs to open his phone, accounts, etc. to you so that you can both learn the truth and check on him. You have to find out if the other woman has a boyfriend or is married and expose her. You have to expose the affair to family and friends to shine a light on it and keep him accountable. And you do your own homework by checking on your own. Buy a VAR and find out if he is still in contact with her. He has to willingly answer your questions and agree to counseling. In short, there is a lot to do if you want a chance here. OP responds, I am really confused right now, but I do want to save my marriage. We have 3 kids together, and he has been the only father in my oldest 2 children's life since they were babies. I don't want to hold on to a marriage just for my kids, and I don't feel I am. However, I feel like I need to know more info on this affair before I can truly forgive and move on. I feel like I jumped the gun due to being overwhelmed with hurt and emotions, and I didn't handle this properly, which has left me stuck with unanswered questions. I want to talk to him tonight, but I am super nervous. A part of me just wants to leave it alone and try to move on, but I am really torn inside with not knowing the extent of this relationship, and if it is even over completely or not. I don't feel like I should be this terrified to speak to a man I have been with so long. I don't know, maybe I just want his love, and I am selling myself short. With that being said, he has been a good husband to me thus far. So it's not like I am throwing away a marriage that hasn't been good, because it has for the most part. But I don't know how to live with this now. It's too hard, and I want to make the right decision for the both of us. It doesn't serve any purpose to be in a relationship with someone where you have to hide your feelings in fear of starting an argument. Just so sad and don't know what to do. Do you all think it's possible to have the talk just to hear what he has to say about it, but still go into detective mode from there to make sure he is no longer keeping up the relationship? I do want to wait, mainly because I am simply terrified to have the talk, period. But this is driving me totally insane, and I almost just have to know more about their relationship. I don't want to jeopardize finding out if it's ended though, but at least he will know exactly how I feel. And if he still continues the relationship and I find out about it while playing detective, which I very much plan to do, then the divorce will be definite. So, my husband got home last night and really wanted to talk to me. He sorts of arranged a quiet romantic evening for us, which took me by somewhat of surprise. He then began to tell me about this woman, where she lived, how they met, etc. I was floored and full of emotions because these were some of the exact questions I've been dying to ask him. I was then able to ask the remaining questions and actually feel they were truthful and honest. It seemed though that he was a bit uncomfortable, as he should have been, discussing this with me since he knows he was wrong. From what he told me, besides the pics she sent and the back and forth texts, phone calls were only to talk about his problems at work. But since she has interest in more than that, I guess he found himself in a compromising situation by allowing her to send inappropriate pics to him. And he even asked her for them. He was open and remorseful about what he did, but swears that was it, no physical or emotional anything. I actually feel much better, but I guess as a woman, I kind of want to bring it back up just to say, are you sure that was it? And you didn't sleep with her at all, but I guess he answered already and I need to accept his answer. Believe him if I choose and try to move on. What do you all think? Also, I am still going to play detective just to help restore the trust lost and be sure he is being completely honest with me. But hopefully not too long so we can truly begin to rebuild our marriage. I guess I am now just wondering if I should still maybe get one last probe of a question in just to have that extra confidence that I heard him correctly. You know, sometimes you have conversations where you are nervous, emotional and kind of feel like you didn't hear everything good, but at the same time, you know what you heard. Well, I went through that last night, but I really don't want to rehash this, especially after he was so calm and open to come talk to me about it. Another huge update. First off, all of you are exactly right, and I am by no means not taking all advice. I know most of you, if not all, have been down this road, or just know so much about it. I, on the other hand, never dealt with infidelity before, and especially not in my marriage, which has been my only marriage. With that being said, I really wanted to believe him, but I don't, and for good reason. So, I listened to the recording from last night, and I just can't believe him. He lied to my face and did it with ease. I absolutely can't trust him, and I am finding out it's not just the one woman. So, let's begin. I hear a whole conversation with this woman, the original one saved in his phone as S from as soon as he got off work last night. Didn't call me, but her, and oh boy did I get an earful. Not only did they talk about sex, but he is trying to arrange a visit with her either this Wednesday on his off day, or this Friday. They talked heavily about having sex, oral sex, etc. I am hurt, but more so very disappointed in him. He even called her baby, but also by her name, Cheryl. As though this wasn't enough, I kept the recording going until I could secretly get it out to listen after he went to sleep this morning from taking kids to school and bringing me breakfast. Unbelievably, he called some other woman and was talking inappropriately with her about her sending more pics again, etc. I am in total shock right now. I plan to keep recording and not reveal my sources. But I am super pissed, and tonight when he comes home, and I am going to demand answers and try to resolve this. He will definitely have to be open and honest and let me know everything, every woman, and how long this has been going on, because if not, I am telling him tonight I will not retract the divorce papers and he will lose me for good, and that is no lie. I was and still am willing to forgive him, but I refuse to be lied to and cheated on. All those conversations sounded like he was straight single. So if that's how he wants to live, he will be, because I will not be disrespected and lied to like this. I didn't sign up for this, and I know people are dishonest, but I just never would have expected this from him. And to continue to call women after seeing how hurt I was just knowing about the one, unbelievable. So, hurt. I filed, so I will confront tonight. I really want to see how it goes, so I will follow your advice and update tomorrow. This will determine how I will proceed once he knows I know everything, but I will definitely not reveal my sources in no way. He can beg, but I am no fool, would never reveal. He better be prepared to plead his case and fight for this marriage. Otherwise, I know divorce would be our only option. I had the confrontation the other night. As soon as my husband got home from work, I didn't just jump into the conversation. I actually asked how was work, allowed him to talk about work, etc. Then at some point, he asked how my day was and if I wanted to talk about anything. This was my perfect opportunity to start the confrontation. I then just started off and asked if he wanted to stay married, and his reasons to if so, if other than for love. I then just told him I know everything. He asked at some point how, but I didn't reveal my sources. I actually told him that is not the issue. And I don't have to explain anything, but he did. I told him straight out that I would uphold the divorce if he lied, say the wrong thing, get angry, or don't be completely open and honest about everything. I made sure he saw the seriousness, and I stressed how I would be out his life for good if this is the lifestyle he wants. Because I didn't marry him to go through this. I also told him straight out that he was dead wrong, that is inappropriate behavior for a married man, and that under no circumstance, in love or not, will I ever tolerate that, or allow that in my marriage. I also explained how I will go forth with the divorce so he can be single and do as he pleases. Well, everyone, his reply was not what I expected, but I must say, I can truly appreciate it. And I have to admit, love him even more for it. He was an open book, and had very genuine emotions, and remorse. He told me everything that has happened, and since out of being married to this man for 15 years, I know was the truth. So, according to him, he never had sex with any of the two women, but one since it's an ex. In the past only. He explained that he was living a fantasy, so to speak, but never intending on acting on anything said. It started as friendships just to talk about work, etc. But never about his marital problems. He explained when and how the line was crossed with all the dirty talk back and forth, the pics, etc. He also explained that he was wrong as two left shoes for all of it, regardless of if it never led to physical or real emotions, just for pretend. I mean, I do understand this only because I have actually thought about chatting with males online just to have someone to talk to keep my mind off problems at home when times were hard in my marriage. However, I know for a fact I never had any intentions on ever acting on anything either, although I never did because it just felt so wrong still. So, he then explained how wrong he was to give them his time, which was taken away from me. Like when he calls them instead of me on his way to and from work. He basically said everything possible to convince me this was really just a fantasy affair, and that he knew he was wrong, and how he'd stop immediately and never do anything like that ever again. Now I know people lie, and they say any and everything to get out of being in trouble, or in this case, lose their wife. But I know my husband very well and have only seen him actually cry real tears only a few times in our marriage, and this man was in more tears than me. I know tears don't mean honesty, or not going to repeat actions, but together with his words, emotions, facial expressions, and overall whole demeanor showed me this was honest. I don't know the future, but I can only take him for his words, work on reconciliation, and see what comes about in our future. Time will tell it all. One last thing, he asked me what he could do to regain my full trust, and that he would start with changing his phone number, giving me the PW, etc. I was actually shocked he asked this and offered some of the things I was going to demand anyway. I am just glad I didn't have to lay down demands. Well, I did, but didn't have to say it first. By him asking, it made it easier to give out all demands I had, and changing his number and giving me all passwords was definitely a must amongst many other demands. I want to say thanks again to all of you for the advice. I really appreciate it. Please feel free to give me more advice on how to move on from here, as I am trying my best, and actually feel much better now. Oh, I am still keeping my VOR, at least for a while. My comment: do you think OP demonstrated true remorse, or you don't believe such things exist? What characteristic demonstrates true remorse? Comment down and sub and bell.